Inspired by what I saw a lot of young people, the way they looked very enthusiastic, his teaching was very logical as well as spiritually. I felt good about it. So I decided to give it a try.
Welcome back to our 5th episode of Why I Stayed. Today my guest is Paul. Paul Herman is coming from Iceland, although originally from America. Tell us about your first encounter with the Unification movement. What got you interested?
Well, I was interested in helping people, and I was already doing social work. I was working with mentally disabled children. But I wanted to work with juvenile delinquents, and we had a friend in the family, a psychiatrist that worked in Manhattan. And I was waiting, I was early for my appointment. I was sitting on a bench in Central Park, and somebody from the movement had approached me, and he had a flyer that he gave me, but more than that, I felt like a brotherly heart from him. It seemed like a nice person, and then what was said on the flyer was interesting. I had time a few days later. I came back to Manhattan 3 days later, and I went to a lecture that was being given on the principles of creation. Mm-hmm. And this is a religious organization, and the fact is that I didn't really believe in God at the time, but I trusted my intuition, and I felt like I did come to the conclusion that there was a guiding force in the universe. I had written a book by Herman Hesse, and Siddhartha. He wrote the book Siddhartha about Buddha before he became Buddha, and I was very impressed by that. And so I read all of his books, and when I got through it, and based on also on my own experience, I came to the conclusion, again, that there was a guiding force in the universe. So I felt like I was guided there. And what was said made sense to me. I come from a Jewish background. Jesus Christ was mentioned, but I was open because, again, I was concerned about helping people, saving people's lives. And I hadn't done it yet, so I thought maybe I could learn, benefit from being.
So the Jewish background, you said you never believed in God before you met the Unification movement, and you wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. So how did that mix in? What values would you say Unification movement attracted you particularly, and how are they different from, for example, Judaism, right?
I could say I was an agnostic. My father died when I was 19, and the rabbi suggested that I do a 40-day prayer for him. I did the prayer, but I felt like the words that I said were just disappearing into the air, so at that point I just put God on the shelf. I put it that way.
What is different about the Unification movement compared to other religions, which are not that foreign to you, as we've been discussing? What is the difference? Is there a difference even?
Well, I mean, we didn't talk about the Messiah. Not my Hebrew school when I was growing up. We weren't talking, about Jesus. And within a week of joining this movement, one thing that was very in that movement, when I got to the center, it was on 18 East 71st Street in Manhattan. There were people from all different races and nations, a lot of young people too. There's a lot of enthusiasm. Mm-hmm. That was interesting. That I liked. But I hadn't. It was just I wanted to. I felt that I should try. What was it that interested me? Basically, it was just like I said in the beginning, I just intuitively felt this was a good place for me to organization for me to become a part of. But it wasn't like theology or anything.
Yeah.
You know, it was just
So the
because
question,
I only heard one lecture.
yes, but you felt
For me,
like,
it wasn't it was all from my spiritual experience.
Okay.
You know how I found out, I came to the conclusion that that Father was the Messiah, was because of that spiritual experience I had. So that's the only way.
Yeah, so these questions are.
so when actually was that? What was the atmosphere back then when you met the movement?
What was the
Atmosphere?
atmosphere?
What was going on?
Well, it was time of the hippie generation, and there was a lot going on in that. I was out of it for a number of years already. I was into it for a few years, but my father passed away in 1969, and then I had to grow up. He was gone. My mother needed my help, and so I became serious about my life, and I got rid of my bad habits, developed good habits, and went back to school and got a good education. And then I started working with handicapped people, mentally disabled people. But I felt I wanted to do more. I felt I could do more. And so we had a friend in the family who was a psychiatrist, and I went to meet with him. This was, did I mention, back in 73?
Oh, so it's 1973.
Yeah, 1973. So I went to meet with him. I was early for my appointment, and I was basically, his office was near Central Park. I was sitting on a bench, just waiting for the time to pass so I can meet him for our appointment. And a person from our movement came by and invited me to come to a lecture. I didn't have time, but I felt good about this guy. He had like a brotherly heart, and he made an impression on me. And a few days later, I did have time when I came down to Manhattan and went to visit their center. And there was a lecture going on called Principles of Creation. I was impressed. It made a lot of sense. I talked about God. I didn't believe in God at the time. Not that I was more agnostic. I grew up with a belief in God. But when I was 19, my father died, and a rabbi asked me to pray for 40 days. And I prayed for my father. And it just felt like my words were going into the air. And so after that, I just put God on the shelf and didn't think about the existence of God anymore. But here I was in this organization that they believed in God. Well, I believed that Christianity, this was basically Christian-oriented organization, and that a lot of good came from the work that Christianity had done in the world, and maybe I could learn something from this group. I also trusted my intuition, and it felt like this was, I'd been guided to this group, and so I decided to give it a try.
I can understand the feeling of being guided, I guess, but also with such an early loss of your father. And how old were you back then?
Well, my father died when I was 19, and
you met the movement?
when I was 22.
22. I'm 23 now, and I still feel like it's a big burden for a 19 years old or 22 years old. You said you had to take up more responsibility, for your mother. What did it take you to make such a drastic change in your life, to join the movement? Was there an experience you faced? A knowledge you got? What was that?
Well, it took me not just to join the movement, but to be involved with to helping people, was because, first of all, I loved my mother very much. She got very depressed after my father died, and I was able to see her come out of a deep, deeper depression and get well. So I was able to see how someone who could be in very, very terrible condition get well, and I was able to help her get well. So I felt I had something that I could do to help people, and I was already doing that, but I wanted to do more. So that's why I had been, in the city for that purpose, and then I met this, the church, and so I was inspired by what I saw. I saw a lot of young people, the way they looked very enthusiastic. His teaching was very logical as well as spiritually. I felt good about it. So I decided to give it a try. In fact, even after listening to the first lecture, I made a decision that I'm going to join this group.
After the first lecture?
Yes,
Wow.
first lecture.
What did they tell you in those principles of creations, right?
Well, again, I had been through a lot, and I really trusted my intuition, so I thought I should give it a try. And so I went home after that, and I had several $1,000s in the bank. I figured the only way that I'm going to know if this is true is if I give my whole heart. And so I thought giving whatever I had financially helped the church, helped the movement. That would be a way of making a good start. So I gave everything I had. I went to their office the next day. I gave all my money. At that time, you could buy half a house with that much money.
You mentioned that the Unification movement embraces a lot of religious beliefs and values, and it's not that different from other ones like Christianity that you mentioned. But I know that there's one concept that we can't really find in other teachings, which is true parents. Would you elaborate on that? What do they mean to you or to the members of that movement?
Well, we believe that Reverend Moon is the second coming of Christ, and Jesus is called the last Adam. We believe that he inherited that position from Jesus, that Jesus should have been married, but because faith wasn't forthcoming during his lifetime, that never happened. And the marriage of the Lamb is what, as described in Revelation, we believe is in action. Not only is it, are Christians in the position of the bride, but also an actual bride. And so we see that Reverend Moon is in the position of like a third Adam, and then Mrs. Moon is in the position of the second Eve. And so, in order for us to be one family under God, which was God's intention, I do believe, and we believe that, that's our teaching, that we need to have two people, a father and a mother. So we call Father, Reverend Moon, Father Moon, Mrs. Moon, Mother Moon, and then united, and then where we get grafted into that, the lineage of God, we believe that we can get into the direct lineage of God through what we call true parents. And then we can be one family. You can be my sister. And so we need to have parents to have sisters and brothers. So we could be sisters and brothers in that way.
Was it easy to you to accept that term? Did you have any personal experience with?
I didn't accept the term until when I first joined, as I mentioned, I didn't even believe in God, but within a week I had an experience spiritual experience, which gave me reason to believe that God exists. And then a week later, for that matter, I had an spiritual experience which gave me reason to believe that Jesus exists. And then later on, I was just calling Reverend Moon, respectfully, Reverend Moon, but I didn't see him as the Messiah because I wasn't just I didn't accept anything until I had evidence that convinced me. And then I had a spiritual experience that gave me reason to believe that Reverend Moon is the actual second coming of Christ.
And you mentioned that Unification movement sees everything in terms of a family. Is that correct? A mother and a father, as you said. How does the movement view marriage? Are you supposed to get married? Were you married in the movement?
How are you supposed to get? Can you say that one more time?
Yeah, of course. So you mentioned a wife and a husband, as I remember correctly, as two parents is the ideal.
Yeah.
So are you married?
Yes, I am 42 years now.
42 years. Yeah. Did you get married in the movement?
Yes, I did. The Reverend Moon suggested the woman that I'm married to.
So what is the overview of the marriage in the Unification movement?
Well, one thing is we believe is, first of all, in order to be mature enough to be a qualified husband or a qualified wife, we have to learn how to be there for the sake of the other. So I'm there for my wife. My children call me your slave. They says that to they refer to me as your slave when they're talking to my wife, but that's cool. I don't mind. I mean, I try to, she's a lovely one person, and you know, if you're going to be a slave to anybody, you can be one to my wife. It's not a problem. So anyway, she has to, we teach that the husband has to be there for the wife to the husband, the parents for the children. That's one thing. We also, you know, and that, I think we're living that ideal in our home. We've been doing that. And then we also believe in eternal marriages. So that's new. I hadn't understood anything about that. But when I think about God, and I think about God's love, I think that would really be a pity if he would, you know, break things up. Why would he want to do that if God is a God of love? He wants us to be together. So it makes sense to me. And anyway, I'm a very spiritual guy, so I could, you know, see it. I can see it. And, that would be my answer to your question.
Yeah. So a world with no divorces. That's very hopeful.
Yeah. Divorce is not part of my vocabulary.
Yeah. And you've been doing this for, you mentioned 51 years. Is there any daily practices, you know, routines? You know, I'm trying to picture your life as a member of the Unification movement, maybe with your wife or children. Do you do anything daily?
Well, I'm retired right now. And so I spend actually 2 or 3 hours in prayer every morning.
Wow.
And I've been doing that for years. And that's a very important part of my life. Even when I first, well, I can't say when I first started, it's just we were so busy, you know, so I didn't have too much time to pray, not much time to sleep, we were just busy. But now I have plenty of time for that. So that's an important part of my life. I study every day. We have I study, well, I would consider God's Word. And so there's the Bible, and then there's the divine principle, which explains the Bible. No symbols, no parables, no metaphors, which makes it, you know, which I can really connect to. And so anyway, I studied that. I also studied the Bible. And I do those things, and I do a lot of outreach. You know, I've been doing outreach. I teach people. I teach people our divine principle. We have Sunday services. I'm engaged in different kinds of outreach types of activities, and sometimes I do a little work and make some money, you know, on the side. I'm the editor, so I do that too. And I've done it for our church too. I spent years working on some of our scriptures that we have in the church. So that's always a blessing, and I do that too.
Very nice.
So those are some of the things I do.
That sounds lovely. I'm trying to picture your life journey. You found the truth, you joined, you built your life, you married based on that, and you seem quite happy with the investment that you made, you know, a couple thousands, was it, a while ago? It paid off, did it?
Paid off, yeah. Big dividends, yeah.
But apart from that fairy tale, was there any hardships? Was there any time that you thought, maybe I should quit? Maybe it's not worth it?
Not yet.
Really?
No, I never had any.
Wow.
So I was convinced from the beginning. Why? Because I saw results. You know, I put the principle, living for the sake of others, giving 100% of yourself. I believe in God. I believe in the second coming of Christ. I believe in Jesus, for that matter. You know, I never had any reason to doubt. I mean, I have my weaknesses. I mean, I made mistakes. Other people do too. But, you know, that's kind of par for the course. People are on the way, you know, trying to find their way to become mature and individuals and families and stuff like this. On the way, everybody makes mistakes, so I can deal with that without having to consider leaving the church, or leaving our Unification church.
It's nice to hear that you were never disappointed. But you mentioned living for the sake of others, and I think it's pretty obvious that not everyone in the world does that these days, and the world itself is far from ideal. How do you, as a member, as a believer, see the situation around you and to stay hopeful?
Well, I see there's a lot of work to do, you know, but I say that and I think everybody can do the work. I mean, just within at least some framework. And, I do some work in my neighborhood. You know, I have people that I'm reaching out to, teaching and this kind of thing. And I can contribute in that way, but I do work. My editing, for instance, that was working for the whole movement, actually, at least English-speaking movement. I was editing in English. And here, I'm in Ireland. Why did I come to Ireland? I came to Ireland because I came to help train the missionaries in terms of outreach, basically witnessing. We call it witnessing. So that's why I came. So I try my best to contribute in every way I can. And I'm not the only one. There's plenty of other people in our movement, and that's like I'm moving to doing it, and I'd love to be able to work together with them as well.
That is very impressive, and we're very happy you did come to Ireland because we can do the same for you. But tell me, throughout the course of your life, and you didn't have any doubts, have you ever witnessed this movement or faith or God changing some person's life, helping them out, that kept you, inspired about it?
Yeah. Before I joined the movement, I didn't smile as much. But I didn't have as much to be happy about. But I saw, once I started, there's so many amazing experiences in this movement, and such lovely, we call brothers and sisters, really, really fine people. And so, and they are growing, and they're working for a higher purpose. And so we don't have enough yet. And the kind of activities that we're involved with, right now our focus is to bring about, believe it or not, it doesn't look like we're we're making much headway at the moment, but we've done a lot of work to bring about the unification of North and South of Korea. We've done a lot of work to help bring about peace and reconciliation in the Middle East, poured endless sums of money into these different projects. So, I could just be, proud of our movement. And what I don't have anything to be, maybe we can move a little faster, we could all move a little faster.
It can always be better, That's for sure. Well, look, I can't help but ask you, you look so fulfilled, so inspired, and you've had such a rich life behind you. Could you give us one piece of advice? What would you say, one thing to a person that wants to make their life just a little bit better? Just to smile a bit more like you did.
I'd suggest that they join.
What an obvious answer.
I think that would be a really good idea. And then, like me, I was only going to stay for 3 years. If it didn't pan out, then I would leave. But for me, it only took 4 weeks for me to get convinced, because I had just affirming experiences that made it clear to me that I was in the right place. Come over for lunch. Meet our people, get to know us, and then let us get to know you, and then I think we can. I'll bet you we hit it on with each other.
Sweet, thank you. Right, and also those mass weddings. Yeah. That's what the Unification movement is kind of famous for. Were you heard of that? What's the significance? What the meaning behind that?
Well, first of all, our marriages, we believe, aren't just for ourselves, it's for the world, where we believe that we're here for the sake of others, and that we spread the things that we believe in. Morality we're very keen on that, and faith, no sex before marriage, and fidelity in marriage, and this is something we want to spread, and we want. And if you live like that, the kids grow up in that kind of environment, we think they're going to be healthier and smarter and fresher, and this is what we see in our own children. And so we're doing this together. This is a mission. We're trying to help clean things up in this world, in that regard. And it's essential, I think, for there to be a healthy society, you have to have healthy families. And this is, we're all together on that. It's actually not very convenient, very good, but it gets married at the same time. It's a pleasure.
But you said the marriage is not just for our sake. So how is it manifested in your life then? So you're living not just for the sake of your family in your marriage?
Well, we make a lot of sacrifices. We have to sometimes go to different countries, do a lot of things, and unless you both are ready to make those sacrifices, maybe like for instance, I'm in Iceland. My wife would never agree.
You don't do missionary work now.
Yeah, to do the.
Always doing missionary work. Even if I had a full-time job, I was always involved with some kind of outreach throughout the 51 years I've been in the movement. So, but she also understands that. She's supportive of that. So if she has to take more responsibility in the home, or I have to take more responsibility in the home, we're ready to do that. We're ready to, do whatever it takes. And if there's a need for foreign missionaries, and that's what there was, that when I was in America, then I was, we were both willing to go. So that's why I live in Iceland. I don't know if I mentioned, but, that's what why we're there, because there was a need for foreign missionaries. And I didn't choose Iceland, by the way. We had to to volunteer, you had to be willing to go and stay there for 40 years.
40 years?
40 years, yes.
Wow.
So we're 26 years there, we're over the hump. So it's all downhill now. But in any case, I didn't choose Iceland. It kind of like, I got Iceland. The interesting thing was that happens to be the country where my father was a radar operator during the Second World War. It's the only country he lived in outside of America. So I felt it was something that was prepared by heaven.
Yeah, wow. I feel like we all really like our countries, and living somewhere else for the sake of people of the different countries already quite a way to broaden your heart, right?
Oh, sure.
I can imagine.
Oh, sure. Iceland is not so different than, it's a Western country, so. But anyway, yes, there are differences, and it's always, you broaden your horizons, and you learn new things and make new friends.
That is very impressive, and you support of your wife, a vision that unites the spouses, and I think that's something that we're all wishing. And I really hope that our audience, Jess and I, will be inspired by your story, because it was amazing. So I thank you for sharing it with us, and so happy to have you here.